everybody. Some of you are new to our events. I'm Elizabeth Elfenbein, the founder of Under the Sisterhood, and I'm just delighted to be here today to get into Under the Hood of Pride. This is a really special month to me personally. And, because we're a company, a social impact company that really focuses on inclusivity, belonging, and mattering, when we think of it in the context of the LGBTQIA community, and if I missed a letter, I apologize. It becomes even more about making sure that acceptance is really at the core as well. And so really creating community. So I was really excited for this month to really launch our Under the Hood of Pride event and have this be something that we do annually. And so I just want to say a little bit about our mission. It'll be a minute. We are a social impact company, and our mission is to build a global community where women's health and well-being are strengthened through sisterhood. And we represent women of all ages, of all backgrounds, of all cultures. And it's really about individual and collective experiences and sharing stories and expertise to help lift other women and ignite change. And so really that's at the core. As I said, this month is really important to me personally. I have a son who's gay, and I come from a community. I'm looking at Robyn. I'm a creative leader, and my community has always been, I went to art school. That has been the world I live in. And so inclusivity, belonging, acceptance has been at the core of who I am as a human, and as a leader of this organization. This really matters to me. I'm delighted to introduce Amy Danielson-Paul. She is our head of programming of Under the Sisterhood, and she's going to be our host for tonight. So I'll hand it over to you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. And welcome once again, everyone, to our Under the Hood Pride event. We are really happy to come together with all of you through these monthly sisterhood networking sessions. This is a time for us all to connect and build sisterhood through invigorating discussions and help foster aligned collaborations. In case this is a first time for some of you joining us, each month we feature a different panel of women. We delve into conversations that we hope will enlighten, inspire, and help you continue to rise in our world today. After each panel, we open the Zoom room up for about a 20 to 30-minute share session. And this is your opportunity. If you have a project, an event, a collaboration that you're looking for, we encourage you to open up your voice and ask for that help. And if you are not looking for anything, we also encourage you to stay to listen, because you may be a resource for another woman in your life. And so we are big on this ripple effect of supporting one another and how we can all step up and help each other. So I am really excited now to introduce our panel today, another wonderful, outstanding panel of women. I will start with Robyn Streisand. Robyn is a health and wellness advocate and the founder of The Mix and Titanium with Diversity in Mind. A trailblazer in the LGBTQ+ community, she has made it her mission to make marketing and advertising more inclusive. As the recipient of AdColor's 2021 Advocate Award, Crane's 2021 Notable LGBTQ Leader Award, Ad Age's Women to Watch, and the Out 100, Robyn is recognized as a gifted connector, strategic problem solver, and champion of marginalized communities. As well as being an active member of her own companies, Robyn serves on the board of several nonprofits, including How Women Lead, the Fluid Project, and Hedrick Martin Institute. Having led The Mix for 25 years, Robyn has built the creative agency into a formidable offering for Fortune 500 brands. With the 2014 launch of Titanium Worldwide, the world's first collective of certified diverse marketing, media, and communications agencies, she continues her quest to provide innovative solutions. Thank you so much for being here with us, Robyn. Such an exciting opportunity to talk with you today and delve into a little bit about your career and how you have been shape-shifting our world through advertising.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm like, whoa, I want to meet that girl.
You are that girl. So let's start with, as a founder and CEO of a marketing company and as someone who identifies with the LGBTQIA+ community, you have a great opportunity to help shapeshift perceptions and ideas into being more inclusive, which is something that our world has needed for so long. So tell us a little bit about how your company leads through an inclusive lens, and how do you bring this through your marketing?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm always about education and awareness, and there's nothing better than giving back and sharing stories with other like-minded people who care, that want to keep growing and want to continue to learn. You know, this path that I've been on, my agency actually in March turned 28. And so I'm nearing that 30-year-old millennial age. Yes. But the mix really started out more as a branding firm and helping clients understand who, what, and where their brand is and why it matters to anybody. And I found in between, I think it was like years 7 to 10, this whole idea of becoming a certified woman-owned business. It was really an accident. And but I learned that I had to have this in order to get a project. And so went through the process. And then all of a sudden, that world of being certified opened up this space of being in marketing and advertising, and the gap that was out there around marginalized communities. And it became kind of like a calling, something that like the seas parted, and this was my chart to like bear. And all of a sudden, my mission and purpose became about helping brands understand who the audience is, how, why, and what it means to them. And the journey has been about literally delivering that and climbing mountains in order to get people to realize the importance. The unfortunate thing is that it was always like in that bucket or in HR, and like HR and marketing never come together to talk about how relevant and important it is. And so I've, over the years, started to bring all of this into one ecosystem so people would understand the value, the reason, and why it matters. And it's become our kind of claim to fame. The unfortunate thing is that, you know, we had to go through the past 5 years in order for people to really wake up about the importance of these diverse audiences and why they matter so much. And to be able to see where we are right now in this moment, this weekend of Pride in New York City, just we're realizing and seeing all the trends and what's, you know, running very hot is, you know, just how brands are pulling back. And there's what we're calling a new status quo, because everybody made such leaps and bounds for progress and change and doing what was right, to only be shut down by the fear of what is happening in the world, to not take their stand. So it'll be very interesting to see how this weekend unfolds. And we'll talk more about it as we get through this little get together.
Mm-hmm. Wow, thank you. Yeah, fascinating. And I'm sure it's been such a big journey of how, you know, the world has changed from one year to the next, from one day to the next, and we, as soon as we make some progress, and then those steps backwards are so frustrating.
Oh.
Yeah.
You know what? But when it's your purpose,
Yeah.
your calling, it's not about how many. It's just that we keep on going.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, the goal is for everybody to be seen, heard, and represented, no matter where we are, inside the company, outside the company, walking down the street, and feeling good about yourself and the world that we live in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well said. Yeah, thank you. I'll be coming back around.
Oh, can't wait.
Now I would love to introduce our next panelist, Tamara Tate. Tamara is licensed as a midwife and a marriage and family therapist. She has a varied background in women's reproductive health activism and has been working in maternal, infant, and child health for the last 20 years. Tamara has a deep interest in the sustainability of the midwifery profession and politics as they relates to birth. On a perhaps permanent break from pursuing a PhD in family therapy, her clinical and research interests focus on exploring mental health issues that are pervasive during the childbearing year, particularly the experience of postpartum depression, post-traumatic stress related to birth, and perinatal bereavement. Tamara currently serves on the board of the Florida School of Traditional Midwifery. She is the owner of a private practice, Kindred Therapy for Wellness. Tamara has spent the last 6 years working as the Director of Student Life, Equity, and Access at the Midwives College of Utah, and as administrator of the birth center she founded, Magnolia Birth House. Tamara shares a home with her partner, Michelle, her stepdaughter, 9 dogs, 2 cats, approximately 200 houseplants, and a 400-volume cookbook collection. Love that. So welcome, Tamara. Thank you also so much for being here with us today.
Great to be here.
So, as a midwife who identifies with the LGBTQIA plus community, what are some changes you have seen for other women who identify with the same community, who want to give birth and who have given birth? Maybe paint a picture for us to understand some of the discriminations that have taken place to how things have become more inclusive.
Well, I think probably over I guess on the younger end of Generation X. So probably over the course of my reproductive life, it's become more normative for LGBTQI folks to seek families, right? That notion that family, it's not just your family of creation, but like the family that you design yourself, has become, I think, more normative for LGBT QIA families. And whether we're talking about wherever on the spectrum of queerness you are, whether it means that families are expanding through adoption, whether that is the formal adoption process or kinship adoption, whether families are expanding through assisted reproductive technologies or surrogacy or those kinds of things. I just think that, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, 30 or 40 years ago, when I was a little person, families being part of what was the right of LGBTQ folks it's not, now it's sort of a given. It was pretty new, in the 80s and 90s. And midwifery as a provider of care for pregnancy and childbearing is by design inclusive. And so oftentimes what midwives will see is that individuals who are part of the queer community seek out midwives as care providers, whether they're birthing in hospitals or birthing at home or at birth centers. There's sort of a natural affinity of the queer community to seek support from midwives. And part of that is just because, the foundation of the midwives model of care is this more inclusive healthcare, more client-centered or patient-centered healthcare. And so that creates an opportunity to have your provider, meet you where you are and be open and willing to engage with you as how you define family. And so that means that it could be someone who's a single parent or single mother by choice. It could be someone who is a polyamorous family, who's coming to deliver at the birth center, and there are 3 or 4 people that are part of that family unit and are going to be there for the birth of that baby. And just the idea that you can move forward in creating your family the way that you want and birth in the way that you want, and not expect to engage with like roadblocks to creating that family of your own design. Some of the things that I've seen change as a midwife just over the last couple of years around inclusion are, when someone's filling out their electronic health record, for example, they have the opportunity to choose their pronouns. They have the opportunity to map out what their family structure looks like, to be able to say, as a provider, it's always interesting to me. I'm like pulling up someone's chart and I'm like, oh, this person is part of the queer community. Like there's nothing about them that's forward facing that's telling me that, but their chart is telling me that, right? And so that expands what I am open to hearing from them or what might possibly come up in the course of the care that I'm providing. And so I think, there is a level of openness about our right to design our own families that's in sort of the public narrative or the public discourse, but there are also structural things that have happened that seem pretty simple but are pretty big, like, oh, I can identify myself as bisexual in my healthcare chart. I can identify my child's family or our family, and I can enter all the people who that entails as part of my chart. That is a structural change, right? That required someone at the top acknowledge that you're valid and your way of moving forward with your family is valid. And so I think both of those things have been happening. There have been structural changes, but there have also been a cultural understanding that the types of families that LGBTQIA folks design are not meant for the shadows, that we are out in the open with the family structures that we have, and that, we need to be cared for in ways that are respectful. And that has been different. I think that part of why midwives are not uncommon selections when they're available for folks who are in the queer community is that there is discrimination that happens, shaming and invisibility, actually, in relationship to family structures and decision making. And because midwifery as a model of care is really focused on openness and acceptance, I think that it's a natural relationship. And so, what I tell student midwives, though, is that it's not a given, right? It's still a skill you have to build, right? So while a community may opt into your care with the expectation that you have more tools to deal with them and interact with them with understanding, that doesn't mean that it's inherently so, right? If you're not part of the community yourself, you're going to have to build skills to know what is the best way to approach families. How do I do that in a way that reduces my capacity to harm them? And so I think, there's growth and learning that needs to happen across all provider types, but certainly when you're talking about providing support to the queer community, that there's learning that has to happen. So hopefully, providers who are interested in being a recognizable place for folks to go are invested in learning themselves, right? And so what are the, and some things are simple, right? So like a sticker on your door is very forward facing so that people can see that and know that it's a safe space. But other stuff is not so simple, like being open to asking the question, what is the best way for me to address you? Wanting to have the family in front of you define who, like, these people are who are all these people who are in this room? Why, you guys are here, everybody's excited about this baby, so tell me where you fit in to this puzzle of a family, and having that curiosity. And that's not inherent. Providers need to learn how to do that. And so I think there being opportunities to give people more education on how to make their practices more inclusive, but also mechanisms to let folks know, like, if you are looking for a certain type of care, these are the providers that you should be seeking. These are the kind of things you should be looking for. Because a lot of times when you're not talking about queer folks and you're just talking about like women seeking healthcare, you don't know what you don't want until you're in it, right? Like you're in the appointment with the provider and you're like, yeah, this is not it. This is not what's going to work for me. So I think helping our community to really know where to look, and identifying places that are inclusive places, but then also having opportunities for providers to learn how to be more inclusive, and that that goes from like visible, tangible signs to being able to engage and interact with clients in a way that is respectful and caring.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a couple of things you were saying that maybe came to mind as you were speaking is one, as you mentioned, 20, 30 years ago, we didn't even have families the way that we can see them today, that everybody matters and family can be different for every person, and we get to define family for ourselves. And what came to mind as you're talking about this is, the advertising, what we see in media, what we see in movies has shaped our definition of what a normative family looks like and what is that. And so it's so interesting to hear both of you right now back to back, how, I mean, it all goes hand in hand, and just very interesting of how that we have seen that change, over the past several years, starting to make a difference. And for your generation, as you said, this is becoming more normalized, and this is expected. And especially, I would say, we're speaking from the US right now, and anybody listening in from other countries, we recognize that maybe not everybody is in the same sort of position, but here in the US, it's something that has been progressing. And I love what you said about the providers showing the signs to make people feel welcomed, and then investing in what's the conversation actually happening that's in the room, which is so important. And all, as you said, for all providers, but definitely in these situations to help continue to progress. So I'm looking forward to more. I'll come back around in a moment. So Robyn, back with you now. What are some major wins and accomplishments in the workforce that you have seen in terms of more inclusivity for people who identify with the LGBTQIA plus community? We've already touched a little bit on how advertising and media has made some big strides over the past, 10 years, 15
Right.
years.
Yeah.
So yeah. Share with us your perspective on that. Yeah.
Yeah. I'd say we've had significant wins, and I think everybody talks about a win in a different way. Sometimes a win could be somebody making a decision to do an internal program or start an employee resource group, and it could be broken down by women and LGBTQ and African American, Asian, and Hispanic, and that could be a win. Or conversely, a win could look, and I've worked with many corporations establishing these groups, and while I might sound sometimes like it's a table stake, I'm constantly learning that people are just at the beginning of this conversation, and you have to be open to wherever anybody is. And it's just about bringing whoever is ready to just come to the start line along. And I forget sometimes even like how simple and basic that is, but it brings you back to what really matters, and it keeps you really true and humble. But big wins outside, I think about, I remember in 2017 when there were 3 years of decks and documents of going to Mercedes-Benz as a brand. And I'm not saying it because it's a premium luxury brand, but it was more about identifying a brand and an audience that were so inextricably connected for everything that they stand for and represent around their values and their reasons for being, like they just were a perfect fit. 3 years of decks and documents, and like, why did this matter, and the power of the audience, and like the future. And if you don't get this audience, which is the tastemaker, the influencer, sets the tone around culture, like you'll never be able to afford to catch up. And I remember that 1 year where they're like, all right, let's do it. Let's do a small program that was one print ad and a small event. And I'm like, oh my God, like it, and it sounds so insignificant in the scheme of things. But for me, 3 years of investment of time, energy, passion, and money in trying to show somebody traditional marketing 101, like to take a step forward and do it. And now, however many years later, we have been building bigger, more integrated, more inclusive campaigns, so much so in 2019, we launched it. It just speaks so well on what Tamara's saying, which is a program that was about your chosen family. And year over year, we always develop platforms that are relevant to the community today in this moment, so that as the campaign shows up in market, people are like, God, like that's us. And that they see themselves in the work. And just to be at the forefront of a brand of that level, and not giving up on them and just going to the next one to try to sell them something that is an opportunity and a possibility to help grow your business, which is really what we're talking about. And for people to like be so internally afraid of just taking a chance, and it's not even a risk, it's just a new customer, a new audience, and like growing the top line. The chosen family work won us so many awards. I mean, even now when I look at that video, it's on YouTube, chosenfamily@mb.com. I mean, I'm like still moved, like the timelessness of also the work that we've done year over year over year. It feels like it was created for today, like right now. So there's something about the authenticity of where the work comes from, as you know, like somebody that's a part of the community, and that we want to be showcasing that we see ourselves. I see myself, even though I'm on the other side of the rainbow. It doesn't mean that I go against the grain. If, like, you know, what happened with Dylan Mulvaney, like, I will never drink Bud Light again. I'm like, I'm sorry. And like those things we can align behind. And, you know, for the most part, we want to always be in the positive, looking forward versus looking at what is not. But the reality is brands have made a significant stride forward. And I have worked across the Fortune 500 in this space, and every program that we've done has been custom made from the ground up. This isn't like something you pull off the shelf and you dust it off and then you put another logo on it. It's comes from within a company's DNA and what they stand for and what they care about. And then we build it very bespoke for them. And the hope and the wish is that the continuity and the consistency is that it builds brand love and brand fans. And then it's about growth and building community. And, you know, I'm not like a name dropper, but I mean major brands, you know, Accenture, Deloitte, Uber, Disney, Chase Sapphire. I mean, Fortune 500 brands like we've brought to this audience. And we've done creative work that their general market agencies think they can do. But the nuance of understanding what makes us tick and seeing that little gesture or undertone that the general market will not see is where the silver lining is for us.
Yeah. Wow. I remember when the chosen family term came out and that campaign, and it made such a big impact on, I thought that made so much sense me in my life at that time. And it made a real impact. And I think that it's changed how people have formed their opinions around family and how they can embrace family in all kinds of ways. So that was a really huge impact. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Tamara, I'll come back over to you now. So you are, as you were mentioning, you're also a marriage and family therapist, and our world has opened up a lot these days, as we've already been talking about, but I know there are still families who follow more traditional upbringings. Share with us some insights on how families can become closer and come together as they become more inclusive of their own family members who identify with the LGBTQIA+ community. and diving into some of the, human psychology and how people can become more aware of their own thoughts and belief systems as they become more inclusive of family, chosen family, loved ones.
Sure. So I was writing notes while Robyn was talking about, I think that that whole chosen family is an idea that doesn't only apply to the queer community, but I think that the queer community really has brought it in front of everyone else. Like, oh yeah, that's right. We all have these relationships where we choose who it is that we're going to interact with and bring into our closest circles. And those people are not always our blood relatives, right? Like everybody does that. It's not just the queer community that does that. The exclusion that the queer community sometimes feel with their families of origin means that it is a necessity, but it's actually a behavior that all of us humans participate in because we don't all have our closest relationships with our blood relatives. I think that to also reach back to some of what Robyn said, when we talk about good marketing, good messaging, we use this language of like representation matters. And what Robyn explained, why representation matters is because if you're in the room, like talking about the idea, cultivating the idea, then the idea is going to be a reflection of your lived experience as well. And so when representation works, it's like I see myself reflected in what I'm looking at, right? I feel seen, right? So the best marketing campaigns is where you feel seen. And sometimes when I'm watching, I am unfortunately a huge television watcher. I'm mostly British TV these days, but I'm a huge television watcher, and British TV is the best. But what I often am alarmed by is even in my own self, as someone who's pretty well into my professional career, I'm a grown adult human. When I see representation in television ads, I'm like, oh, they're trying to tell me that they think that my community, and it could be women, it could be brown and black folks, it could be queer folks, that like we are the kind of people who would use this product, right? And I'm still surprised some days when I see like even like a Publix ad and it's a queer family or a black family. I am shocked sometimes at brands making that leap, especially as we get more into these we're in troubling times right now. And so as we move deeper into troubling times, I think it'll be more critical, really, to be able to see people showing their values in this way. Marketing is how we know that these big brands, at least they want us to think that they care about us and our lived experiences. And if we're using the power of our dollars, then we want you to at least act like you care, right? We want to see that demonstrated in the type of ads you provide. There's a reason why I'm always going to buy a Patagonia if I can buy a Patagonia if I'm buying a coat, right? Because that company lives its values fully, right? They've committed their revenues to the earth. They had, in-house childcare back in the 70s when that wasn't even a thing, right? So we all want the kind of to participate in capitalism in ways that makes us feel like we're resonating with our own personal values. And some of what marketing does, to go back over to, how people can operationalize in their families, marketing is also telling folks who may be more closed-minded, like, yeah, it's actually okay. Like what my daughter feels or my son feels or my child feels about where they're at in their lives and what they believe. Like apparently the world thinks this is an okay place for them to be as well. And so I think that, TV and radio and print media create a normalization for families who maybe it's not in their local neighborhood. Maybe it doesn't mesh with like their religious leanings or their upbringings or their church family. But there is some signal to them that in the wider marketplace, outside of their own community, their closest community, that there is a level of acceptance and openness for something that may be new to them. And I've certainly been impressed by observing my peers and, friends and close friends and extended networks, the amount of openness that folks have now in 2024 that maybe didn't exist in 2014 or 2004 about just a willingness to meet their kids where they are. And, Gen Z and Generation Alpha, like they don't care. Like they're not trying to make themselves smaller to fit in any box that we have for them. They're coming with their whole selves. And so they want us to receive them with their full gender expansiveness, whatever that means. They want the labels, they don't want the labels, they're just showing up how they're showing up. And I think that while we're all reeling in shock, because I know a lot of Gen X folks are like, what are these kids doing? Part of what they're teaching us, I think, is that like that's what we deserve, right? And so we are of a generation X and later, where we took what was at the table and we, made different dishes with it. Maybe we tried to pull up our own folding chair, but like these kids are like, what table? Like, that's not what we're doing. And so I think that some of what they're offering us is like wanting to be accepted on their own terms, demanding that from the people who are close to them, being willing in ways that we learned but didn't maybe perfect. Like, I'm going to step away from something that doesn't serve me and doesn't want to make room for me. And so I think that families just have to decide, like, this is a human I made, or I participated in their upbringing and becoming who they are. And I just have to decide what kind of relationship I want to have with them. And the internet, I remember dial-up, right? So the internet is in a whole different place now. And so there are all these opportunities to connect with people who are sharing your struggle. And so, that's part of what I would encourage to families. It's not easy to be inclusive. It's not simple. We're all socialized to be how we are, right? And so any growth in how we function in the world takes time. It's a skill. We have to build it. And so there are so many places to go for support. And I think that trying to tap into those spaces, find that group of other folks who have a trans kid and, do your best when you're in front of your child, and then go on to Facebook and be like, listen, I'm struggling. Somebody explain this to me. Help me understand this thing. Help me make sense of this. And then I think also, there's still going to be those people who can't make that leap, right? Who can't commit to growing and learning, for whom evolution is just not on their list of things they're going to do this lifetime. And for those people, I think we need to find spaces and make spaces for folks to go who need to find their chosen family, because their family of origin is never going to deliver to them what they need. And also teach them through mechanisms like therapy and support groups and other spaces, like how to do that cutoff thing that's in the therapy textbooks in a way that leaves them whole, because, I know lots of people who've done cutoff in their families, and it hurts, it's hard to do, it's challenging. And so I think we need to create opportunities for individuals for whom their family is never going to be a refuge. So like, how does this chosen family thing happen? How do I do that? How do I make that work for me? And when I need to heal from the wounds that I've received from my family of origin, where do I go to do that? What are the spaces I can do that in? Where's my community of folks who've been where I've been, who can help guide me through that? And so, I think popular culture is doing a pretty decent job of making openness available to us if we choose to accept it. I am too troubled about the walk back that's happening. That walk back is happening across the whole spectrum of diversity, equity, and inclusion right now. It's everywhere. And so I don't know where we're going to land there. But I think one of the things that oppressed and marginalized communities, which means queer communities, brown communities, Black communities, have done forever, from like all the way back, is find safety, right? Design safety of our own design, right? And so I think what's important, or what feels important to me, given the times that we're in, is like, let's keep pushing forward on this public continuum, but like be doing all that other work that will help us to survive and thrive in case what's happening in front of us starts to deteriorate. And so I think that hopefully, there are conversations that are happening in communities about that. Like, what are we going to do if things are different in 6 months, in, 12 months, in 18 months? And so I think we need to do some scaffolding and like resource building for the future that looks not the way we would like, so that we have armed ourselves to be able to survive and thrive in that place. And our community, all of these all marginalized, oppressed, vulnerable communities have done this before. We have the skills, we have the bench of folks who've been there, done that. And so we just need to be networked with each other to be able to make that work. And so
Yeah.
that's my offering.
I love it. I love it. And as you were speaking, another thing that came to mind was how we do see progression in our world is through the next generations. And we can see the progression of evolution just by these new fresh beings coming in saying, this is who I am, unapologetically living out that innate person, that human that they are, just naturally. Um, so we can take that as a small win, a big win. Something else that you were mentioning with the wins, Robyn, is how we do define that, a small win, a big win, and something as simple as Tamara is saying, putting a sticker on a door could be a small win that makes a big impact. So the small wins can really make that impact, and how we can all be a part of the small wins to make that greater impact, I think is really important and something for us to continue to be really mindful of in our participation.
I wanted to offer, it might have been in 2015 or 16, there, and definitely worth looking at for all of you, but there was a gentleman by the name of Rob Smith. And Rob was somebody that grew up in the retail space and really understand brand and retail and driving people into the store, not necessarily from a marketing perspective, more from a product perspective. And then Rob had this kind of epiphany about this future generation coming, this non-binary, gender fluid place. And I remember when I met Rob Smith for the first time, he's like an Adonis, he's handsome, and he's got suave bola about him. And he took me through in his head, like, about creating this place where people can go, where they could learn about this audience, this gender, non-binary, like, what does it look like, and creating a physical brick and mortar destination where people could come to see what they're afraid of, what they don't know, and be able to start to wrap their heads around that this is coming, that it's not going anywhere, and it's gonna come like in a way that nobody really knows. And so Rob opened up the store. It was down on Broadway and West 4th, right? So right in the heart of NYU, and really where this younger generation lives. And I remember I would literally set up these meetings with my clients, and I would bring them down to the store to start to like educate them on this new world, these new humans that were coming to the planet, and to start to educate them from a place of not only themselves, because believe me, they would come into the store and be like, what is this? Really cool clothes that were gender neutral, right? So there was no men's fitting room or women's fitting room. There was no bathroom for women or bathrooms for men. And the whole space was just an opportunity to just start to see who these people were. And he had a space downstairs, which became a community space that was free, that was available for the community to bring moments together around things that matter to the community. And I have to tell you, for 5 years, this transformed the landscape of what this future looks like. And Rob has now kind of taken off. The thing about COVID is it brought so so many gifts to certain people, but it also was detrimental to others. And anybody in retail was so, that Rob wound up having to close the store. But the impression and the mark that that store made, and then bringing it into an online platform, so it lives on beyond the physical. And, I believe in karma and positivity, so everything has a reason and a time and a place. But, and just talking about what Tamara's saying about just being okay with what's coming and what's happening, and it's okay to not know. And I only brought that up because it's like our responsibility as a part of these letters of this community, to educate people wherever they are, whether it's inside of your profession or not. But sitting behind your desk and not advocating for our freedom and our right to marry and our decision about who my chosen family is, it's up to us, every one of us. And it's been more of how my work inside my agencies has now through these board seats that I do, is the give back component of creating this word that Tamara used, which is about safety. Like, people have to feel safe wherever they're going, and people don't feel safe. They don't feel safe in the subway. They don't feel safe walking from West Village to East Village, or getting on a plane and going to Florida. Like, people don't feel safe. Right? They just don't know. And you would think, like, as New Yorkers, we're resilient and we're fearless. But, it's a very challenging moment of time where we're sitting right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that story too.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's what informs culture is what people are doing. And it's my responsibility to share this with this group of people, because it's showing that you don't know how you could be helping, how you could be educating. And sometimes it's right in front of you. You just have to connect the dot and just trust yourself on that. By sharing this with however many people I shared it with, they are now sharing it in their world, in their family, in their networks. And, we have to be better together.
Yeah. Yeah. Very true. I mean, you kind of took me into that next question. We already summed it up, but if there's anything else you'd like to add in terms of all the progress that we have reached, and for anyone listening to this or that's here today, what can we do to make a world a better place for all people? You've touched on a few things already, but if there's anything else you'd want to add to that.
I just, I I really think you have to put a stake in the ground. You have to do something beyond what you do for a living. You have to find places and spaces where your voice could be heard, where education is of value and people care. And I think that we're always, well, I could speak for myself. I'm always about learning and growing. And as a leader and somebody that's responsible for running a company and providing safety there, I think we all just have to do more. And it's not about writing a check. It's about raising your hand. It's about volunteering. It's about understanding. Like, this board seat that I'm now in with the Hetrick Martin Institute is all about the LGBTQIA community from the ages of 14 to 24 who kind of got kicked to the curb because they are not accepted by their originating family. And this has our foundation is grounded in mental health, because the impact that this has on these kids being tossed like this is everlasting. That never goes away. you just learn and understand how to deal with it better. But foundationally, it's always there. And so finding places and spaces where you all could give back, it'll make your world more well-rounded.
Yeah,
Takes a village.
really does. Really does. And Tamara, well, we are aiming to bring more inclusivity to the world in general. Oftentimes, subgroups, subcultures have their own division within. So do you find division within the LGBTQIA plus community? And from your personal and professional experience, what sort of inspiration can you leave us with today to help create more unity within the smaller subgroups and subcultures across the board?
I think that I've certainly seen the community of folks who identify as women, and that's across both of my professions, struggling with inclusion around the trans community, and what it means to use even just something so basic as inclusive language, right? And I think that there's so much wrapped into like the history of like feminism, and all of the struggles that feminism has waged over the course of the last, I don't know, more than 100 years, including, the fact that feminism itself as a construct has not been inclusive, right? That feminism has its own issues and things that need to be addressed around, race and class, for example. But if there's been so much work done under this umbrella of womanhood, then how do we then step back, or like that's maybe what it feels like, step back to be inclusive to non-binary folks and trans folks. And so I think that for me that takes me back to and there's been controversy in the midwifery community over this that's been like sort of very upfront and messy, and so I think that that whole idea, like, I'm not asking you to erase someone. I'm asking you to render them visible, right? I'm asking you to acknowledge that they are potentially in the room, and to speak to everyone who's in the room as best you can, and just finding ways to be able to explain to people, what is it that we're trying to get at by something so basic as using inclusive language, right? What does that mean? And I think that for women, it's pretty easy to see like how sexism and patriarchy, misogyny like conspires to erase us and render us silent and invisible. And so it should be not a hard leap to make to think about how important it would be to not feel that way, and how do we make it possible for the other parts of the alphabet to feel present and included in how we speak and how we engage with each other. And so I guess, part of what I'd want to say about that is, Audre Lorde has lots to teach us as a visionary of her time and as a poet and a thought leader. This whole idea, like there's no hierarchy of oppressions, right? Like my liberation is bound up in yours. And so, we have to find, I think, if we're in a time that is trying to be dark, that we have to find relationship with each other if we are going to make it to the other side of wherever we are right now. And that this notion that like our liberation is bound up together creates an opportunity for us to build relationships and alliances and to collaborate with each other, and to, collaborate across the parts of our struggle that are shared, and with this belief that like if we all make it to the other, like we can all make it to the other side, right? I don't need to make your struggle smaller in order for my struggle to be recognized and to be addressed. And so that's something that needs to happen within the LGBTQIA community, but certainly across the broader community of folks who are commonly oppressed and vulnerable and marginalized, to help us all move forward, right? We all, nothing about us without us, but like all of us at once, because it's gonna take all of our energy and all of our commitment to get through this moment that we're in. and to be able to make demands on the system for our humanity that we are past due, but needing to maintain. We all want to be living lives to the fullest of our potential, and to be having sovereign lives, and to be living in a way that is vibrant and respected and all of that. And so, we need to be all asking that for everyone, not just for ourselves and our own individual interests. And I think some of the siloing is not helpful. And so being able to recognize like where our struggles are shared, and to be able to collaborate across those places, where it makes sense to do so, and to offer support where it doesn't make sense to do so, and just being willing to be flexible and dynamic about that, I think is part of what the moment is asking. If the moment is begging for us to be flexible, and for us to be dexterous, and for us to be clever, and for us to be focused, that is where we're at right now. And so we just have to all be, we're in the Titanic. We have to all commit to like what we're doing on our floors, and how we're supporting the upper decks and the lower decks, and because the ship needs to make it to shore. And that's just what I'm really probably a little bit too deep into deep adaptation and all of that right about now. But that's part of how we need to look at where we are, I think, because we are under attack, and that women are under attack. The LGBTQIA community is under attack. Black folks and brown folks and indigenous folks are under attack. Many of the gains that we have made in the last 20 or 30 years are being systematically dismantled. And so we were not made for the shadows. That's not what human beings were made for. And so we really need to be focused, I think, in our attempts, and to take heart. And in community, we can do that, right? Because if we're in community, like if I don't have what it takes today, then my brother or my sister or my friend, they do. And so they can hold me up at the back and the front so I can get where I need to be. And so I think that's the moment that we're in. And so hopefully we can all meet the moment, as Ayanna Pressley says. The moment is asking, it needs us to meet it right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. This has been such a impactful conversation, so rich and so layered, and